Being great at sales is essential to your business and your career, but you and I both know that the stress of selling and dealing with constant rejection can be an emotional drain. My entire brand, No BS Selling, is based on the belief that professional sales is a skill and not a personality, and that to be better at sales takes constant refinement and a dedication to your craft. This show is for salespeople and entrepreneurs who are committed to improving their sales skills and getting better results, and are sick and tired of the BS game that often happens between buyers and sellers. Welcome to the No BS Sales Podcast, and I'm your host, Walker McKay. I'll help you and your sales team make selling easier, feel less cheesy, and be more lucrative. It's time to change the rules and level the playing field between you and the people you sell to. You're already good, let's be better.
Glad you guys are listening today. My guest on the No BS Sales Podcast is Mr. Todd Caponi, whom I met a couple weeks ago. He is charming and he's smart as hell. Todd is the founder and principal of Sales Melon, which is a sales training and negotiation training company. He's also the author of a book called The Transparency Sale, which you guys will see on the newsletter. If you're not getting my newsletter, go to my website, walkermckay.com/newsletter. You'll see I did a review on there of it, and I highly recommend it. It's in my recommended books list. I want you to listen to this episode today because Todd has some awesome things to share about how transparency is so important in sales. Todd's philosophies and mine match very well. He's just thought it through more and is smoother than me. So listen to the show. You're going to love it. Hey, Todd, welcome to the No BS Sales Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I can't wait to dig into this.
Well, I'm glad to have you on the show. One of the interesting things that I've learned about Todd, because I've been following him on Twitter for a while, at Todd Caponi, right?
That's exactly right. At T Caponi. So just
at T Caponi, Caponi. It'll be in the show notes. Don't worry about it. Todd has been posting. He loves the history of sales. And he is a nerd about the history of sales and how far it's come. And so he is collaborating. He's written a bunch of books. He's studied this stuff. Todd, how in the world did you get interested in the history of sales? Why is that a big deal to you?
By the way, I'm for anybody who can see this book I just got, it's from 1918.
That's what I saw.
It is called The Art and Science of Selling. It smells so good. It's like so crisp, but
does it smell like a sales guy's butt that's been riding around?
Gosh, is that what that is?
It must be.
Gosh, does that make me creepy that I like that smell?
It's never been opened, so it probably smells great.
Oh gosh, it is so freaking awesome. But here's where it started. My father-in-law gave me a sales book that was copyright written from 1945. I started reading this thing and I found that almost everything in it is still completely applicable today. I mean, technologies have changed. Some approaches have changed, but for the most part, it was like if you took paragraphs of this and put them on LinkedIn or Twitter as a post, people wouldn't know it was 60, 70, 80 years old.
How about that?
And then in the book, it was referring to other books. And so I kept following those back. And that's why, like, I'm in the 19 teens now. And man, it is, all right, so 90% of it is awesome.
Yeah.
There's about 10% that you're just like, what?
Like what? Give me an example.
There's one you might have seen my tweet about where the guy was talking about the fact that, you know, there's sales or there's buyers that are cool, like they're going to be receptive. And then there's buyers that are what he called bullies. And then he says in this quote around the fact that, you know, one salesperson going into a lumber yard put one of those bullies in the hospital.
Stop it.
And I'm like, and then it kind of talks to that mental capacity and mental acuity is important, but so is physical strength. And I'm like, what? Like, really? But like back then, apparently, if you're selling into a lumber yard, you might have to rough some people up.
Yeah, to kick a man's ass to be able to sell lumber.
Exactly. I thought that, I mean, there's some of that. There's one other one before we dig into the transparency that I think is awesome. Back in the early 1900s, there was something called phrenology. Now, phrenology is the study of your head structure.
The size of your brain, the shape of your head or whatever?
The shape of your head. And basically, they took phrenology, they matched it up with sales and created a philosophy that Ford Motor Company actually used.
Wow.
That would, a sales rep would go assess the shape of your head and then would alter their messaging based on, you know, if you've got a larger forehead, it would tell me as a salesperson that you are more open and have a higher capacity to new ideas. So I'm going to go that route versus if your head's a little different way, you might just need feature benefit, right? I'm like, brain structures, but in the 1916 World Sales Congress, which is a big user convention or sales convention, in 1916, keynote was President Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah.
But the phrenology guy was one of the keynotes. Like these 3,000 people were all like, "That's a good idea," but apparently, I mean, so there's so much. Like, dude, we could talk about this for an hour, but
yeah,
I just love it. It makes me laugh, but it also brings me back and gets me thinking about how technology has changed things, but at its core, sales is still sales.
We're still humans talking to humans.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And having to, in my mind, it's you're having somebody trust you enough to give you money to make a problem go away.
Exactly. And our brains, while maybe we evolved a little bit, we
Yeah.
still are, our triggers for decision making, for prioritization, for engagement are exactly the same as they were 100, 150 years ago.
Isn't that funny? That's cool. One of the things, I finished your book, and I loved it, by the way. Like I say, I reviewed it. It's in my newsletter. But one of the things, the quotes that you saw from way back was from 1920 something, I think says, if the truth won't sell it, don't sell it. Yeah. Tell me, why did that strike you? And then how is that how have you changed your approach or matched your approach for that?
Well, that was one of the things, like, I write the book, The Transparency Sale, and I'm like, ooh, I'm so smart. Like, look what I came up with. And then I'm going through that quote was from a 1921, it was May of 1921 edition of Tractor World magazine of all.
Tractor World, of course.
Yeah. And they had the 10 traits that make a good salesperson. And one of the things is don't exaggerate. And again, to your point, if the truth won't sell it, don't sell it. That was the whole point. But gosh, when we think about the book and the concepts of transparency, I'll talk about that in a minute. But again, transparency is always sold better than pretending you're perfect
than bullshit.
Or bullshit. Exactly. Like the perfect name for a podcast is the No Bullshit Sales Podcast.
No. It's No BS Podcast.
No BS.
You spin it's different, whatever you want, but no bullshit is what a lot of people think.
Exactly. So, I mean, these concepts, this is nothing new. We've always known that setting proper expectations is better than under-promising and over-delivering, which sounds counterintuitive.
Yes.
But under-promising and over-delivering, if you continue to do that, you're actually lying. And there's a phrase that I like to call expectation inflation, which is if we consistently under-promise and over-deliver, over time, our customers will go, hey, Walker just told me this, so I'm going to go what he said plus X, and this is my new expectation, and it's something that you can't keep up with. So and leading with here's what you're going to get, here's what you're not, and embracing that. We know from the behavioral science, the data, the research, that it sells better. And they knew it in 1921. They just didn't have all the data and the behavioral science around backing it up.
So what is your background? Can you take 2 minutes and tell me how you got to be Todd Caponi, famous sales author and world famous trainer?
Yeah, I didn't know I was, but that's
you are now. You're on the No BS Sales Podcast, for God's sake. Everybody knows about you.
I'm very excited. Thank you. Thank you. So my background was I was always a pretty good sales guy. In the late 90s, I was selling for the big software company SAP.
Yep.
I got to tell you this story because I think it's funny and I'm biased by my own. 1999, I did 800% of my target. Nice. And so like, I'm this kid, 800% of my target. I'm like, I'm pretty freaking awesome at this. Yeah. Well, 1999 and SAP was like working at a drive-through window.
Yeah, sure.
That was a time, SAP sells these the ERP software.
Giant software, that foundation of other software.
Exactly. And if you remember in 1999, everybody was worried about the Y2K. And they thought that, hey, if we don't change out our systems, like planes are going to fall out of the sky and our toasters are going to explode. So
that shit was real. I mean, people really, I don't know, most people aren't even old enough to remember that, but that shit was real. People were really afraid.
And that's what was going on. I looked at my 1999 quota and I was like, gosh, how am I going to get to 3 million this year? I did 24 million. I did a $21 million deal that had a 4-month sales cycle. Like,
holy shit.
And so I was like, gosh, I'm awesome. I learned very quickly after September 11th and the bubble burst that I really didn't. And I really, I'd always had this kind of desire to understand decision making, right? And so I ended up with my brother Barry, who I understand was also a guest on the show here.
Yes.
He and I bought sales training franchises. He stuck with it. I did it for a couple of years, but then ended up getting pulled back. Mm-hmm. What ended up happening from there is very quickly I moved into a role with a venture-backed startup company out of the Valley. I got in there. The CEO recognized that, like, hey, this guy's a nerd. He should run things. I don't know how that happened, but I ended up moving into a VP of sales role. We took the company from barely keeping the lights on to 400% year-over-year growth. We sold it to SAP.
Nice.
And then I had a couple other stints like that where I was on the sales leadership team of a company called Exact Target. We built that up, IPO'd, and then sold that to Salesforce for Dr. Evil money, $2.7 billion.
God.
And then went to a company called Power Reviews, where we built that up from the ground up into Chicago's fastest growing tech company.
I'm tired of you bragging. I'm tired of you bragging. Stop this bullshit. Let's not. I don't want to talk about how rich you are.
And then now, then I came across this research study that literally changed my life. I quit my job and I wrote a book. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the research study was based on what?
Yeah. So what happened was I was that last company. I was the chief revenue officer of. It was called Power Reviews, and you could probably guess from the name. Power Reviews is in the review space, right? Well, we were helping retailers and brands collect and display ratings and reviews on their website. So you're buying a pair of Crocs or you're a sweater from Vineyard Vines or you're on Jet or whatever. You look at the product, you scroll down, there's our reviews. So we are helping those companies collect and display. Here's what happened. Research study we did was with Northwestern University, where they were looking at the data and saying, all right, as a consumer, when a website is acting as the salesperson, what do people do? Now, the first piece of data is no surprise. We all look at reviews now. Right. Yes. It was 96%, and I haven't found the 4% that don't. So if any of you are like hate reviews, call me, because I would love to just understand that. But
interview. All right.
There's two things that jumped out that I was like, wait a second, I may have been doing this wrong with my team. Like I had 60 people reporting to me. 82% of us go to the negative reviews first.
Yeah.
So we'll skip the 5s and go right to the 4s.
Yeah, what's the real, what do people hate about this? This is something I care about. Yes.
And then on average, if you look at an average review score out of 5 stars, when the review average score on a product is between a 4.2 and a 4.5, that is the optimal review score average for purchase conversion. Meaning if a product has nothing but 5s, it won't sell as well as a product that has a 4.2 average, which is totally counterintuitive, but it led me to, all right, when a website's acting as a salesperson, imperfection sells better than perfection.
Yes.
Right? 4.2. I decided, being the behavioral science nerd I am, I want to dig in and understand like why, and does that apply to human or B2B sales? Literally the first time I tried it, magic happened where I led with, I almost sold on behalf of our competitor, and the sales cycle that was normally 6 months, they made a decision in 10 days throughout their RFP process and didn't have any, but like they were going to have our whole team fly to New York and do this big dog and pony. They threw that out. And I was like, wait, and literally the buyer, the senior vice president, during our first discussion where I did this, he literally showed his budget to me. And I had never I'd never actually seen a real budget like that. Right.
Yeah.
And this guy's showing it to me the first time I tried it. I burst into tears. We hugged. We laughed. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
but
wow.
I just, that's weird. Especially where I was.
Don't believe I'd have told that. But
I was. At, it would be even weirder if you knew that it was at Calvin Klein, so like an underwear company in New York. But then we tried it again, and similar.
So tell me, break it down here. Take a little bit more. Try it. What is it?
It. What do you mean it?
Well, you said we tried it. Tell me, explain more. Yeah, what does that mean?
All right, so here, let's go. So Calvin Klein. What happened was I was in New York. I had an afternoon open. I was the chief revenue officer. I had a VP of sales in Chicago here, which is where I'm located. As I'm there, my afternoon meeting canceled. My flight wasn't until the evening, so I was just going to screw around in New York.
Yeah.
He texts me and he's like, dude, inbound lead from Calvin Klein. I'm like, Calvin Klein, that's a great one for us.
Yeah.
I called my VP of sales and said, tell me the story. He says, well, they're just starting their evaluation process, but they've told us they're going to do an RFP. They're going to then invite us up to New York to do the full dog and pony, ride the unicycle show. And then, and I was like, New York? Oh, that's right. They're in New York. Hey, could you have the rep just reach out to the SVP of e-commerce? I know it's like a 1 in 100 shot, but just see if he's around. I've got an afternoon open. I would love to go grab coffee with him. So the rep does, and the 1 out of 100 hits. The guy says, yeah, come on by. Like, all right, cool. So I go to Calvin Klein's office, meet him. We go back into his office. As soon as we walk into his office, there's an arm, like one of those arm monitors coming out from the cue wall.
Yeah.
And he's just like, you can plug in your laptop for your presentation here. And I'm like, I thought we were having coffee, dude. Like, what are you talking about? I look to my right and people are rolling chairs in, 7 of them. So all of a sudden I'm sitting
you went from a coffee meeting to all of a sudden you're in front of 7 people with a giant account.
Well, exactly. And there's 9 of us in this little hot New York, Manhattan office. And this dude was New York in the best way possible, meaning there was no small talk. He just was like, let's get to it. And he starts with this question. Todd, we've looked at your competitor. We're looking at you. How are you better? And
Great
like
question.
you could
Love
see
that.
Everybody in the rooms, like arms kind of go up like, all right, here comes the sales pitch.
Sale, right.
And so I looked around. I was by myself there. So I was fresh off of this research. So I thought, I've got nothing to lose.
Yep.
If it screws up, I'll just lie to everybody back at the office about what happened.
A bunch of assholes.
But exactly. So I said, hey, listen, before we go down that path, you've got a bunch of people in here. You're planning to invest a bunch of time. Can I start with how our competitors better than us? Because they literally just released an add-on to their core reviews technology that not only do we not have, but we haven't even contemplated it, meaning it's not even on our roadmap. So if that's going to be an important consideration, can we vet that now? And if it turns out that that's going to be a key thing, I'll get out of your hair. I'll go buy my own freaking coffee, jerks. But you'll save the RFP process and all of that.
All right. So tell me something. I hear you and I love that. And I have, I've never been in front of a company as big as Calvin Klein. So I've done that, but you must have been shitting bricks when you did that.
No,
are you literally in the place where you said, I don't fucking care?
I was so confident, and I knew that I didn't want my team working on all of this stuff.
Yep.
We go through an RFP, which is a freaking nightmare, right? RFPs are the worst.
They're the worst.
I fly, my rep, me, everybody up to New York. We spend 3 days building a custom presentation, all that bullshit. If in the end, they're going to say, gosh, I wish you guys had this ad retargeting
right.
thing.
Yeah.
I've been like, that would, and literally the competitors, that add-on tool, their beta customer, meaning their their first customer that they tested this with, was in the apparel space.
Wow.
So I knew they were going to come selling hard on it. I was like, hey, I'm going to sell it for them. And literally you could feel the whole room, just like the air go out. They're just like, now. And they start debating with, like, I think 1 out of 7 people were like, yeah, we could, it sounds interesting. And then like the head of e-commerce was like, well, why would we go to a reviews provider for that? And like, they're arguing with each other. And finally they turn the attention back to me and they're like, we're cool without it. Like that's not going to be important. I was like, wow, you sure? And then they're all laughing. They're like, yeah. And I was like, all right, cool. We're probably never going to do that because we want to be great at our core. Right. Yeah. And so here's our core. Here's what we're great at. Literally 10 minutes later, he kicks the other 7 people out, shows me his budget and says, can you hit that number? And like, I literally was like, what just happened? And then 10 days later, he called to say that they're throwing out the evaluation process and they just felt a real level of comfort that our core is better aligned to what they're trying to accomplish. And I think they just like, this guy felt like we were buddies instantly. So it builds it on a foundation of trust. It disarms the brain's resistance to being influenced, and it saves a freaking ton of time. So
which is the whole key to this whole great sales is not necessarily, you're not going to close everybody. Nobody's got a magic pill, but boy, if you can not chase the ones that aren't going to close. And what I love about it is you're being freaking real. You're being absolutely real, which is so damn important and so rare in today's world.
Yeah, it's funny that there's a lot of leaders out there that still go by this. I don't know if you remember this, but I know I do. And sadly, I may have actually asked reps for this. Is there used to be this concept that you should always have 3x your quota in pipeline at any time, right? Like that was always, and I started thinking about that and I was like, well, if we measure to that, then we're going to have 3x. Like that's going to turn out to be the case. Yeah. And that also means that we're going to lose at least 2 out of every 3 deals. That's stupid. Like, why not better qualify deals in or out early by leading with transparency? And then your pipeline load can be lower. You close a higher percentage of it, and you get to spend time on opportunities and prospecting and opportunities you should win. And everybody
clients are raving fans because you did what you said you were going to do.
Well, exactly. They buy more, they stay, and they tell their friends.
Tell me, because part of your book was about negotiations, and you call it cards up negotiations.
Yeah.
Tell my audience, tell the No BS sales team about cards up negotiations. What does that mean?
Crazy. Yeah, it's our. I'll tell it to you in the form of a story.
Good.
This happened 12 years ago, so it was 2008. I was at a huge oil services company in Houston. It was we had a 3-year deal on the table that was worth about $4.5 million total.
That's pretty good.
It was a big one.
Right? Yeah,
that's a big deal. I haven't done a big deal like that in a long time. Mm-hmm. My rep calls me, my Houston rep, and it was just like, Todd, they're tired of the back and forth. Like it's like the car sales thing where it's like every time he gets asked, he's like, I got to talk to my manager.
It's terrible.
Get your manager down here. So I fly down to Houston. We meet this guy, but when the doors open up, it's not just this guy. There's like a whole crew of procurement people ready to do that. And so I looked at this and I was like, gosh, I know where this is going. So I threw the cards face up. And before I tell you what happens there, I just want everybody to think for a second about what it feels like to go into a negotiation. It always drove me nuts that I felt like I needed a different personality to negotiate. Meaning the sale is all about building trust and collaborating and helping a customer predict what their experience is going to be, help them make the right decision. Then they say yes. And we're like, all right, cool. I'm going to start lying to you now. And like, that's typical negotiation, right? It's like we put on our Texas Hold'em poker tournament styles and like, oh, I'm going to read their tells. Is their eye twitching? Maybe they're lying.
Are they looking up and to the left or up and to the right?
Exactly. Right. That always drove me nuts. So combining what happened there with that reality, I was like, listen, I know what's about to happen. So before we go there, can I just share with you what's important to us and our organization? And so I went up to the whiteboard and I wrote 4 things on the whiteboard. The first thing I wrote was volume. So we care about how much product, services, technology you commit to. The more you commit to, better it is for us. The more we'll pay you for that in the form of a discount. The second one is the timing of cash. As it turns out, we like money. The faster you pay, better it is for us. The more we'll pay you in the form of a discount. The third one was the length of commitment. The longer you commit to our products, technology, services, the better it is for us. We can resource, we can predict, we'll pay you for that. And then the fourth one is the timing of the deal. It's value for us in being able to predict our business. And if we can align around when you think we might get this done, I'll pay you in the form of a discount to hold to it. I got done with that. They were like, that's fascinating. Cares. We need 30% off. Like, all right, 30% off. What would you normally do? Well, in a normal case, you'd go into Texas Hold'em poker style.
Yeah.
Like, is it really 20? Is it 15?
Right.
And maybe we play a little ping pong with it. And we're just like, hey, Walker, all I can do is 10%. I can't get to 30. And then you're like, we could probably do 20. And then you play until you've given away 15% as charity to their bottom line, which is stupid. Instead, what I did is 30%. You know what? Based on what I just talked about, we might have a path to get there. Let's talk about volume. Can you commit to more volume? You've got other divisions. Can you accelerate cash? You're paying, monthly over 3 years. If you pay annually up front, I'll pay you for that. If you pay the whole 3 years up front, I'll pay you in more for that. It's a 3-year deal. Commit to 4 years, commit to 5 years. I'll pay you for that. And this was July in Houston. I remember it specifically.
Smoking hot, sweaty.
Yeah, nice buggy,
terrible.
And I said, when are you aiming to get this thing done? And they were like, gosh, the reason you're here is we're trying to go. So maybe August. And I was like, I'll give you till September. Because being transparent, my quarter ends in September, and that's
Yeah.
what I have to forecast. So if we can align around getting this done by, say, the 3rd week in September, I'll pay you in the form of a discount for that. We went through those things. They're basically negotiating their own deal. We got something of value for every dollar we gave away in the form of a discount.
Yep.
And what did we end up with? Accelerated cash, which was awesome. We were a small company, and having that kind of cash, that was quite a party. And we ended up with a predictable deal that they signed by the end of September. And they got something of value for it, which is a few dollars off. And this procurement team, that's what they cared about. But it becomes a structure that allows you as a rep, as a leader, to be consistent, to be transparent, allows for you to build value to every dollar you give away. And it builds trust to the goal line instead of eroding it in a traditional negotiation.
And see, that's what I was sitting here thinking as you're talking about that. When you lay out the 4 things that are important to you, whatever the hell they are.
Yep.
And then when somebody says, and you're not putting a price on each of those, by the way, I mean, you're just saying, here's the things that are important to us. And they say, we need X. Say, well, if you give me then more of this, we can make it work. So if I do this for you, will you do this for me? But you're just laying on the table what you want already.
And they all work together, right? You don't do them in silos. You say, like, the client might say, hey, Todd, we're going to need net 90 payment terms. We're like, all right, well, remember, a core tenet of our pricing was annual upfront net 30. If you went net 90, we could potentially do it, but here's what the cost of that's going to be: either more volume, commit longer, help me predict my deal, right? So with every single one, nothing becomes a giveaway. And you've got I bet you everybody listening to this could, ingest those levers and be able to start communicating them right away. And I'm guessing with most companies, those 4 that I shared are the 4.
Yeah.
Right. It's like how much you buy, how fast you pay, how long you commit, and when you sign, right? Like there's not a whole lot else that there could be.
Right.
And so start to work that into your dialogue, and it becomes a way for your customers to trust you. It builds confidence. And again, your deal values go up, your discount percentages go down, and your forecast gets better.
Todd, that is really super and such useful information. Negotiation is somewhere that most salespeople suck. You're right. It turns into a fight, and we're afraid, and we always give the other person all the leverage, and we get our butts kicked. I've learned a couple things from you today. You mind if I share those with you?
I do, actually. I'm just kidding. No, go ahead.
Yeah, God, you son of a bitch. I knew I didn't like you. I think it was from the book as well, but the statement, if the truth won't sell it, don't sell it. And I mean, that's just such an overarching great theme for sales. I love that. I also love the levers for negotiation. I think that's big time. And also the concepts of transparency when you've done your research about it. I think that neuroscience is such a fascinating topic, a subject, and that you have really dug into that. I think it makes your work so important and so realistic. So tell me, how would people get in touch with you, Todd? I know you train companies for negotiation and sales, I mean, around the world. How would somebody find you if they were wanting somebody to speak or to train, something like that?
Yeah, I'm really hard not to find, which is the good news. So yeah, I mean, if you just remember Todd Caponi, then you use the Google machine. But the 2 best ways are via LinkedIn. I'm on there, and I'm always sharing stuff too. So follow me, connect with me there. But my website is transparencysale.com. And actually toddcaponi.com goes to the same place, but there's like contact us forms all over it, but it's got a lot of info about the keynotes and the workshops. And then my blog is there. If you want to consume more of my nonsense, I'd be happy to have you as a subscriber.
It's awesome. Todd is he's a great guy. He's very humble and he's smart, and obviously been a pleasure to have on the show. No BS Sales Team, I hope you've enjoyed today. I hope you've gotten a lot of things from this. Go buy Todd's book. Go get the Transparency Sale. Another thing, I've got this newsletter I keep harping on that I send out typically twice a week that has tips, stories, videos, links to podcasts, book reading lists, stuff like that. If you want to be in the know and get stuff ahead of time for other people, sign up for the reading list or sign up for the what's it called? The mailing list. Please do that. Also, as always, there's a free giveaway I have. It's called 7 Sales Mistakes, number 7, salesmistakes.com. It's a free video series, 7 common mistakes people make in sales. You'll probably recognize yourself in one of those. Press subscribe. I think we're supposed to say mash subscribe. Share this with somebody else who needs to hear it. Hey, Todd, thank you so much. You've been a great guest. I look forward to probably have you back on the show sometime soon. I appreciate it very much.
I'd love that. My face actually hurts from smiling. This has been a blast.
You're the man.
Thanks.
Guys, thank you.